everyone, welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about certain psychological, biological, environmental factors that might be actually contributing to why some people develop a compulsive obsessive disorder. So if you're interested in topics like that, then keep watching. So all of us, we have a set of certain strengths and vulnerabilities, and because of that, some people might be more prone maybe to develop anxiety, and maybe other people they might be more prone to develop maybe depression. And from the research, we learned that there might be psychological, environmental, biological factors that might be contributing why someone is actually developing mental health problems. And all of us, we are at some point perhaps in our lives vulnerable more or less to certain mental health issues, but definitely all of us, we have our limits. So when life pushes us so hard, then all of us at some point we can develop certain mental health issues, and it might not be the clinical depression or the obsessive compulsive disorder, but there might be periods of time when maybe we feel more low, or maybe there might be periods of time when maybe we feel anxious. So for different people, there might be different factors that might make them more vulnerable to, for example, feeling low mood. And now, because of the neuroscience, we can also better understand what is actually happening in terms of the processes in our brain when maybe we feel low in mood, or maybe when we feel really anxious, because we can measure the chemicals. We can see as well on the scans how the brain processes certain information at certain times, and all that, it just gives us some information and some clues of why perhaps certain people, they might be more prone to maybe anxiety or depression. So according to research, the biological and the genetic factors, they actually fall into really low risk in context of OCD. Only about 10% or under 10% of those risk factors, they can be actually seen as biological or genetic. And then we have the psychological factors, and those psychological risk factors, and they very often are being linked to feeling of being responsible. And OCD is really linked to how we think and how someone responds to the thought process. We all have certain beliefs about ourselves, about other people, and the world around us, and that all is going to be really related to where we place ourselves in the social culture context. And obviously, and that will be then linked to our values that we live by. So we might not consciously actually think of them all the time, but definitely we're gonna live by those certain values that we have. So now if we'll think about a situation where maybe there are two people, and maybe they both get late for work, and one of them maybe has more positive outlook at life, and the other one has might have slightly more negative outlook. So one person will think of this lateness happen sometime, where the other person might say like, why bad things always happening to me? Why is always me? So we can see the difference. It's the same situation, but how they see the situation is really different. So the values, the beliefs that we hold about ourselves, other people, and the world around us, it's gonna act as a lens through which we're gonna see the situations in our life. So if you have more positive outlook at life, you might see this situation as not actually as bad, as not tragic. But where someone has more negative outlook at life, they might actually see it as some catastrophe, as something really terrible that has happened to them. So for people who might have more negative outlook at life, that situation actually might activate the belief about themselves that maybe they are a failure. And normally those beliefs that we hold, those, like, we call them actually core beliefs, they normally come from like very early childhood, from maybe the interactions that we had maybe with our teachers or maybe our main caregivers. So people who suffer from OCD, their beliefs, they tend to be linked to a need of being perfect, a need of being in control, of knowing what's gonna happen next, and as well to this really inflated sense of responsibility. Research indicates that this really inflated sense of responsibility in adults can actually be linked to certain experiences that maybe they had in their childhood. So maybe for some people, when they were children, maybe they were made responsible for maybe the younger children, but obviously I'm talking here about quite extreme cases. Or maybe they were made responsible of looking after maybe their grandparents, and that already can contribute to them developing OCD when they are adults. Or maybe some kids, maybe they were made to follow very rigid ways of being when they were kids, and they were told that if you're not gonna do that, this or that's gonna happen. So they were perhaps as well like scared and threatened. So that again can contribute to them later in life developing OCD. And there's also research indicated that some very strict religious upbringing also can contribute to developing OCD in some people. But perhaps that will be again linked to maybe certain following certain very rigid rituals. So all that perhaps just comes to having this environment in childhood which is very rigid, where there's perhaps a lot of threats being put onto the child. So let's say that the person actually has some of these biological and psychological risk factors, and then later in life something happens to them. So maybe their partner develops a cancer, and that's when perhaps this already elevated sense of responsibility is being triggered. And perhaps a situation like that would be stressful for anyone, but for someone who has those vulnerabilities, that actually then acts as a trigger, because perhaps then they have this sense of being hugely responsible for the partner, for caring for them. And that's when maybe the sense of control as well is being triggered. So they really have a need to control everything and keeping everything under control. And that's maybe when these rituals, maybe the washing or maybe following certain thought process really helps them with managing this anxiety and the stress that they're experiencing in this very specific situation. So yes, if you found this video any helpful, then please like it, subscribe, and if you have any questions, any suggestions, then please leave them in the section below. And yes, I'm gonna see you in the next one then. Bye.